Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today it's April 3rd, 2025. We are nearing in on 5 years of doing these IC topic chats. Can you believe that, Lauren? Lauren came along a couple of years ago. She joined in on some of our workshops, and she's been such an exciting individual to watch because she was a professor and she's going to tell her story. I'm not going to steal her thunder, but she and her partner have really done a lot to kind of come along and start up their practice. And it looks like they're just doing fantastic work. And it's been fun to watch you guys grow and develop. But Lauren, take it away. Let's talk about scarcity to wealth. And if anybody's watching this on YouTube, I've told everybody live, every time she says something that feels like you just want to stand up and say amen, we're going to be doing little emoticons or
Mhm.
whatever they're called to kind of excite with excitement because I know that that's the way this session is set up. So Lauren, take it away.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you for having me, Matt. I was really honored when you had asked me to be part of the Meet the Pros. I feel like I'm still, fairly new in the evaluation space. It's just been a few years, but like you said, I feel like we really have, just grown so much. I know I've grown so much, not just professionally, but personally over the last couple years. If you knew me like before I got into this, I'm just totally different. Like everyone in my life is just like, what happened? Like you're so much happier and you're lighter and I think I'm a little bit more fun and, I dance around the house a little bit more and I sing a little bit more and, all these things, even though I don't sing well. And so I think that really is attributed to a lot of what I'm going to talk about today in terms of mindset, not just abundance mindset, but just mindset in general. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my story, and then we're going to get into talking about, how this applies to you and why I think it's so important when you have an independent consulting business. And I have my chat is on my other screen, and you all are kind of on my other screen. So I might like if I look back and forth, that's why. And I may not. Always keep up with the chat. So just so you know. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in if I can get my thing to move. Okay, so who am I and how did I get here? Okay, so as Matt said, I'm Dr. Lauren McClain. I have a PhD in sociology, and I was a sociology professor for 14 years. So I went straight from high school to college to graduate school, and when I was in college. I fell in love with sociology, my first intro class. I had no idea what it was before that. And I fell in love with it. And I had talked to my faculty about, kind of what can you do with sociology? And the answer was anything. And I was like, well, that's not helpful. So, I want to like use sociology. How do I do that? And they said, well, I had been a peer educator for a really long time. And they said, well, you should be a college professor. Well, I grew up with kind of with a scarcity mindset, as I'm going to talk about, and I always wanted to be financially secure. Like that was always something that was very important to me. And I said, well, I don't want to be a teacher. Teachers don't make any money. And they said, well, college professors do. Professors make anywhere from like 50 to $150,000 a year. And my parents made probably about $50,000 a year at the time. And so I was like, well, if I could come out making that, I guess that would be great. And so, and I really loved, being a teacher, and I really loved the research part. So I decided to be a professor. And I'll also just say this, but I have had many experiences in my life where I have like figuratively missed the boat. And I feel like the professors I was talking to at the time were professors in sort of the heyday of academia, where professors were paid really well and it was, a very prestigious career. And I think it's still prestigious, but the pay has definitely gone down. But anyway, nonetheless, that's the journey that I set out on, right? And I wanted to be a professor. And that was my goal in life, right? Was to be a professor. And I did that. I became a tenured associate professor. But the thing is that I didn't come out of grad school making $50,000. In fact, it took me almost 6 years to hit $50,000, which was incredibly frustrating and very disappointing. And I spent most of my time being a faculty member, still living paycheck to paycheck. And there was just something very demoralizing about that. But I loved my job, right? And so I think, I love everything about my job. I love teaching. I love research. I loved the university at the time. I loved, the atmosphere of academia and felt like I was making a difference. But my salary was terrible. But over time in my career, those things started to flip-flop. And I finally got to a point where the things that I liked had gone down so much, and the things I disliked had gone down so much that when they flipped, I thought, why am I doing this? And around that time, I had read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I have as a recommendation on a later slide. And has anyone ever read that book? I know Matt has, and if you have not, read it. And so I was the poor dad in this book. The poor dad got a PhD, like played by the rules, right? Got an education, got as much education as you can get, became a professor to have this prestigious career, but was always broke. And it just really got me thinking a lot about money and scarcity and the way that sort of I had been raised to think about money, that it was if there was never enough, that it was always, when you get money, it goes, your car breaks down as soon as you get your tax return or something like that, right? And so those are the kinds of things that I had learned about money. And like I said, I had from a very young age always wanted to be financially secure as an adult. I mean, most people want to be financially secure. But I realized that, in 40 years of having a scarcity mindset, that influenced so many things about my life, right? When someone would say, "Hey, wouldn't it be really fun to do a girls' weekend?" My first thought is, I can't afford that. And I was like, this is just not the life that I want to be living. Like, I want to be able to take vacations. In fact, most of our vacation money came from teaching a summer class. So there was a couple years where my summer class didn't make, and we didn't get a vacation that year. And I'm like, I work too hard to like have my whether or not I can go on vacation be dependent on whether or not I get a summer class. So, so I really dove into this money mindset stuff as I was also simultaneously making the transition into being an independent consultant full time. So money mindset matters for everything. Mindset in general matters for everything, but I think money mindset matters for everything. It matters for how you spend your money, how you think about money, how you look at money, how much you worry about money, how much you check your bank account. In my scarcity days, I mean, I check my bank account like 4 times a day, right? And then I would talk to friends that had more money that would be like, I never check my bank account. I'm like, what do you mean you never check your bank account? But when you have very little money, you always have to worry about how much is in there, right? And so these are things that are just really important. And when you own a business, right? When you're an independent consultant, you own a business and you have to, find clients and bring in money. If you have a scarcity mindset and you are constantly stressed and frustrated and worried about where that next dollar is going to come from, that is going to actually repel new clients from coming to you. So I'm going to talk about why in a little bit, but that's where I want to set the stage for. This is where I'm coming at this from, right? And I have done a complete like 180 on my money mindset in the last couple of years. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It's something that takes work. I've read a lot of books. I've read listened to a lot of podcasts. I've done a lot of trainings, worked with some coaches. Like I've done a lot of work on this. So it doesn't happen overnight, but you don't have to do all of that to make some adjustments to your mindset. So hopefully what I'm going to talk about today are things that you can take away and really feel good about and start implementing in your own life. So the first piece to identifying or changing our money mindset is to overcome some money myths, okay? There are a lot of myths out there about money that we need to address and tackle before we can start changing the way that we think about money. So, one myth that you might have is money is evil, or people with a lot of money are evil. And I don't care that this is being recorded, but Elon Musk is the perfect example, right? He's got more money than anyone in the world and is not using it for good, right? There's no charities in his name. There's no scholarship funds in his name. He hasn't cured world hunger, right? And so, like, we have a lot of, even though he could, like, he literally could cure world hunger in like a minute, but he doesn't, right? And so we have a lot of these myths about people with money or that we think of phrases, money's the root of all evil, and things like that, right? So if we think that money is evil, then why would we want more money or do things that bring more money to us? Or like how is that calling in more money? It's not, it's repelling it, right? So Money is inherently neutral. Okay, money is inherently neutral. It is not good or bad. We assign value to it, right? So instead of saying, associating money with stress, it being evil, whatever, all these things, we can associate it with good things, right? We can say that money is a tool to help our family go on vacation. Money is a tool to do more good in the world. Money is a tool to reduce stress so that when our car breaks down, we have the money to fix it and it doesn't become a stressful issue, right? So money is inherently neutral. We assign value to it. So just keep that in mind. Another money myth that you might have or that you might have heard is that wanting to make a lot of money makes you greedy. And when I first started working on my money mindset, I felt kind of embarrassed to say, like, I want a multi-million dollar business and I want to be a multimillionaire. I felt kind of embarrassed about that because a lot of people take that as like, oh, like you're just greedy. No, you're worthy of money. You can do great things with money, right? I know that if money is in my hands, I'm going to be super generous with my family. I'm going to be super generous with my friends. I'm going to be able to donate more to charities that I care about. I'm going to be able to, just do nice things for people, like just leave, I'm going to be the type of person that leaves $1,000 tip on a bill at a restaurant or whatever. Like there's a lot of good things that you can do when you have money. It does not make you greedy. It is not bad to want a comfortable financial life. It is not bad to know that you're going to be okay if you do lose one client or if if your car breaks down or you get a big bill in the mail you didn't expect, right? It is okay to want to make more money. Like that, if you don't think it's okay, I'm telling you now. Say Lauren says it is okay to want to make more money. It does not mean that you are greedy. There's not enough money to go around. That is just simply not true. There is more than enough money for everyone on this planet to have the money that they need, right? It is hoarded by some of these big people, but it doesn't mean even take out their money, right? There's still enough money in the world for everyone to be comfortable, right? There is, and I just think it's absurd that in our country, the richest country in the world, that we have so many people that live in poverty. It's absurd. There's no need for that. So if you make more money, that does not mean that someone else is going to have less money. Okay. So just, we got to get rid of that thinking. Yeah. So there's more than enough money for everybody to have. Um, and you might have some fears around money. And this is something that I have had to do a lot of work on and I continue to do a lot of work on. And so maybe some fear around money. There's a lot of what a friend of mine, Emily, calls money wounds. She has a book, again, I have it in the recommendations later. Money wounds, right? What are the money wounds that we have, right? So it could be a money is evil. It could be that there's not enough money to go around. It could be, what if I end up making more money than my family? How are they going to view me? I worry about that a lot. I hope my mother's not watching this recording, but you know, she tends to talk sometimes about people who make a lot of money in sort of a negative way. And so, sometimes when she says that, I say, "Well, Mom, I'm trying to be one of those people," And so it's so we might have some fear, like, what if it changes us, or what if people around us change the way they view us, or what if I make a lot of money and then I lose it all, right? That's a fear. What if you're tying your happiness to money, right? What if you're tying your happiness to money? Then, if what if you make more money and you're still not happy? Well, then that means you have some other work to do, right? But having money is safe. And creating a feeling of safety in your body around money is really important to bringing more money in, right? So if you feel safe with money and you feel that money likes being with you, you like having money. Money provides a feeling like a safety net in terms of, again, if your car breaks down or you have an unexpected medical bill or something like that, that creates safety. So try to replace any feelings of fear that you have around money with feelings of safety. Okay. And so in addition to just some things that are sort of out there about money, we also need to deal with our own money wounds, like I've just sort of alluded to, right? And so some people have these myths about themselves, like, I'll just be happy if I can just pay my bills. You hear a lot of people say that. And that's kind of a way of maybe the people who say that are also the people who think that wanting a lot of money makes you greedy, right? So they don't want to say that they want more. They just want to, I just want to be comfortable. I'm just here to tell you today, you deserve more than just making ends meet, okay? You all are highly educated people, you work really hard. You deserve than more than just making ends meet. If you want to go on vacation or you want to, buy a designer handbag or whatever it is that you want, there's no judgment about how you spend that money. If you want to donate all the money you make to charity, great. So this is about defining it however you want. Like, what does this look like to you, right? But you are also worth and making as much money as you want to make, okay? Why would someone pay me that much? When you are an independent consultant, if you have that feeling right there, you are setting yourself to be underpaid and burnt out because you were going to have to do so much work to get to a threshold or a minimum that you want if you are concerned that people wouldn't pay you that much, right? So there's a couple things, and this was my biggest thing when I came out of academia, right? Because in academia, you are undervalued left and right. Like you're always being asked to do stuff for free, you're underpaid, you're like, there's all these things, right? That just tell you over and program and condition you over and over again that your skills aren't worth anything, right? That they're not valuable. But they are extremely valuable, right? The skills that we have as evaluators are so valuable. And like Matt just said, you can look at what's going on in the world from like a really scary perspective, right? Like there's a lot of us who are losing projects. There's a lot of, evaluation work is going away. But there's also a lot of opportunity because there's going to be more opportunities for consultants to step in some of these areas. Now, I don't want to be perceived as like trying to capitalize on the shit show that is this country right now, but it is important just to recognize our value and what we have to contribute, right? And I think that there are a lot of ways that we can contribute really positively, not just right now, but throughout our whole careers, right? And so you are providing value and you are providing service and you are providing skills that these people need, right? And so a lot of times people think of it like sales, right? Like I'm selling them something. You're not selling them anything. You're solving a problem for them, right? And so if you're going to solve a problem that is valuable to them, then you should be paid for it. Um, it's crazy to think that I can make X amount of dollars, right? So I remember I was in one of Ann Price's office hours at the end of 2 years ago, I think. And she said, what are kind of your goals for the next year? And I started to say what I wanted my income goal to be for the next year. And I stopped myself because I was embarrassed to say it because I thought, well, maybe that's crazy to think I could make that much money. And, and it's not. It is not. People make a lot of money. You can make a lot of money in a lot of different ways, not just from evaluation, but other sources of income streams and things like that. And so it is whatever you want to make is not crazy. Right. So, and in fact, I would challenge you to start setting those limits higher and higher. Right. So, in fact, it's probably too low. Um, a little tool too for this, why would someone pay me that much, is whatever you think you should charge, especially in the beginning, add 20% and start there, right? And that can be really uncomfortable, but in the beginning, but it will get you to be charging what you need to be charging, what you're worth. And the biggest killer, I think, for independent consultants or business owners, I don't know if this will work out. If you are sitting there being like, I really want to have a successful business, but I just don't know if it's going to work out. What if I don't get clients? And what if I get clients and they go away? And if you are thinking like that all the time, you are setting yourself up to fail. Okay. So you really need to be thinking, of course, this is going to work out. Of course, I'm going to have a successful business. Of course, clients are going to want to work with me. I'm amazing, right? Of course, that, I have valuable things to contribute, right? And people will want to pay for that. So you have to shift your mindset from worry to confidence. Okay. You really have to believe in yourself as an independent consultant. That is just one of the greatest things that I think has served me well is when I was leaving my tenured position for independent consulting, so many people were like, "Aren't you scared? Aren't you terrified? What if it doesn't work out?" And it literally never even crossed my mind, what if this doesn't work out? It just never crossed my mind because I know if I put my mind to something, I'm going to make it work. And I think having that confidence and just that drive to just make that decision that this will work out and it will be fine has served me well through my entire life. That is one thing that I feel like I've always kind of just felt like, of course, it's good. My favorite quote is, "If it's not okay in the end, it's always okay in the end. So if it's not okay, it's not the end." And I just have lived by that my whole life, and I think it's just served me very well. Um, all right, so here's where I'm going to get into the quantum physics and the so it's a little woo-woo and a little bit of science, right? But I kind of put together. And I will note I am not a quantum physicist, so you can take what I have to say here with a grain of salt. But it is definitely things that I have learned just from all of my research and all of those things, over time. So the basic quantum of or the basic concept of quantum physics basically suggests that there's just these fundamental components of the universe that are more that are not deterministic but are probabilistic, right? And so this means that sort of at a quantum level particles like exist in multiple states at once until they are observed, which is really hard to wrap your head around, right? But what does this mean? It means that our thoughts and intentions can be seen as probabilities, right? So again, if I say, "Oh, this isn't going to work out," right? I'm increasing the likelihood that it's not going to work out, right? But if I say, "Of course it's going to work out," then I'm increasing the likelihood that it will work out, right? So this is so like there's we all know that like every decision that you make in life like puts you on a different path. Every little decision, right? Do I go to the grocery store first or do I go to the I don't know, do I go get my nails done first, right? Like that changes the course of your day, right? So if you just think about very basic things and think about big things, right? Do I go to college? Do I go to this college or that college? Do I major in this or that? All of those things are shaping the next outcome. But what if that also applies to our thoughts? Right? What if every thought that we have shapes what happens next? Right? So if you are constantly thinking negative things are probably going to happen. We also kind of the we and like the universe kind of orchestrates things in a way that sort of are like it's always saying yes, right? So if you're always stressed about money, you're probably always going to be stressed about money, right? If you're saying, "I don't think this is going to work out," the universe is going to be like, "Okay, well, maybe it's not going to work out," right? But if you're like, "I think great things are going to happen. I think today's going to be a wonderful day. I think clients are, on their way to work with me," things like that, then if we say yes to those things, if the universe says yes to those things, then you're going to bring those things in, right? And so I think that this really goes with law of attraction, right? Is that like kind of attracts like. So think about it like this, right? If you are out walking around at the grocery store and you smile at somebody, what usually happens? 9 times out of 10, that person smiles back, right? If you look at someone with like a very straight, serious face, 9 times out of 10, they're going to give you that same look back, right? So if you think about it like that, if you're constantly putting out positive vibes, right? And high vibes about money and high, that like, of course my business is going to work out and I'm going to take this great vacation this year and I'm going to make, ridiculous amounts of money or whatever it is, you're calling those things in, right? That law of attraction, you're calling those things in. And so I think that all of this is so important for independent consulting because you really need to set some intentions about what you want your day to be like, or what you want your quarter to look like, or what you want your year to look like, what you want your life to look like, right? How do you want to spend your time? How do what matters most to you? And if you focus on those things, then you're going to be more likely to achieve your goals than if you're constantly worried about the fact that they might not work out. Right. So I would think about setting intentions each day, writing it down, having sort of a a manifestation that you say every day that's kind of like really unique to what you want to do. So I'm going to tell you my a couple success stories with this quantum shifting and consulting. I have been for a while, I was saying kind of this mantra like every day. My ideal clients are on their way to me. They're excited to work with me. They're excited to spend money with me. They're going to be fun and easy to work with, and they're going to really enjoy the work that I do for them. And I was saying that like every day. And within a few days of saying that, I called in like 3 or 4 new clients. Like I went to bed one night and I said that right before I went to sleep. And I woke up the next day to an email asking for a meeting for a new potential client. And I ended up getting that client. I have, and because I've said like they're excited to work with me and they're excited to spend money with me, I've had a few examples recently where I had like one example. I am working with a client. They want to do a planning grant and for a project. And I met with her about how I could help in this planning phase. And I said, "What do you I said, okay, I can put together a proposal. And their team was going to be meeting to talk about budget. And I said, do you want me to put in the proposal ahead of that meeting, or do you want me to go to that meeting and then kind of we'll build a budget from there? And she said, oh no, I want you to have your budget so that you can come to that meeting to get your piece of the pie. Now think about how that phrasing, your piece of the pie. I am not on this grant. I am an external person, right? But she was concerned that I get paid well for the work I was going to do for them. Right. I had another project where gave them a proposal. They didn't have all their details planned out yet. They were going to add a year. They came back and said, "Okay, we're going to add a year. This is the amount we were thinking." And I said, "Okay, well that's about $10,000 short based on my rate." And I said, "But if you want that rate, this is what I can do. I can take away these services or whatever and we can come in there." She emailed me back in 15 minutes and was like, "Oh no, your original rate is fine." Like I really believe that those things are because I have been constantly saying that mantra about clients that are excited to work with me and want to pay with me, and I'm really excited about them and they're going to be fun to work with if all that goes through. So there's a lot of examples that I could give you about how I have really felt that this has worked for me. Um, and there's a lot of people out there that it has worked for. So I really want you to start manifesting. I want you to use affirmations. I want you to think about, everything's always working out for me. Money flows to me easily. My ideal clients are on their way to me. They're excited to work with me, love spending money with me. I work with ease and flow, right? A lot of times, I know I personally have a hard money wound. Okay, a hard money wound is that I think I have to work myself to death in order to make a lot of money. And so I am frequently up late working at night and I am frequently doing all these things that I don't probably need to do. So that's what I'm currently working on in myself. So this is something I need to start saying to myself more. I work with flow and ease, right? That, I don't have to be stressed in order to make a lot of money. I am capable and worthy of great success. So a lot of times, so if you're in a situation, and I understand that there's a lot of people going through a lot of hard things right now, and so some of you might just be sitting there. I'm not looking at the chat, so I don't know how maybe if anyone's saying this, but you might be like, everything sucks for me right now. How am I supposed to sit here and say everything's always working out for me? Okay, and I get that because I know when I had like $10 in my bank account saying I'm a millionaire didn't my bank account showed otherwise, right? So like how do you say things to get you to this better state when you know the reality is not that, right? And here's what you need to do is say things that do feel comfortable, right? Like things are not working out right now, but I believe that ultimately they will. Or I think that what's going on right now is trying to teach me something. There's a lesson here for me to learn, right? Or I am capable of making maybe you don't feel comfortable saying I'm a millionaire, but you can say I am capable of being a millionaire, right? I am worthy of being a millionaire. Whatever that number is to you, right? And so think about those, when you say these affirmations, think about things that do feel good to you, right? If they bring up a lot of resistance, then it's not going to feel good, right? But if you find things to say that that do feel good, that you can feel comfortable with, then, then that will make all of this easier. And I think it's going to call in those things a little bit quicker. And you can do this with anything. Of course, today I'm talking about money and business success and all that, but I mean, this could be about love. This could be about, your health, your, physical body. It could be, whatever it is that you want it to be. World peace, getting certain people out of office. I mean, you can use this for anything, right? And so just, really think about ways that you can, or affirmations that feel good to you, that help call in some of these positive things. Okay. Um, Oh, I didn't realize I had that going on. All right. So action takers get results. So first thing is building your confidence. I think um, a lot of times people wait to do things until they feel ready. And that's kind of not really how it works, right? Sometimes you have to dive in and build confidence by doing, right? And so this could be your entire, independent consulting business if you're new, right? That just you're never going to be 100% ready. Just dive in and start doing everything. And I always say you're never going to know everything when you start. You're going to learn as you go. I know so much more than I knew when I started, and I'm going to know so much more a year from now than I know today. And so just do it, and by doing it you're going to build your confidence. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn from them, and that's okay. It also applies to mindset, right? If you feel like you don't have a good mindset right now, maybe you don't feel super confident, maybe you do live in a scarcity mindset or whatever, right? Start taking little steps to start building that confidence, because as you start taking those steps, as you start doing, as you start seeing some of the positive results from that, you're going to become more confident, right? You're going to become more confident in yourself. You're going to be more confident in your mindset. You're going to be more confident in your ability to make more money and have a successful business, right? So just keep going and take little steps at a time. Learn business success strategies and profitability. Okay. So while I'm here talking about woo, put it out to the universe kind of stuff, you still got to, take action yourself, right? You can't just lay on the couch all day manifesting and expect to be a millionaire, right? Like it doesn't work like that. You have to co-create your reality. Okay. So, read books about business success and strategies, work with people, talk to people who are successful. Everybody in this group who is successful has always been open and kind and helpful about sharing how they got to where they got. And have always been grateful for that. There's so many resources out there. Work with a coach. I feel like I really got to where I am in a lot of this stuff with this mindset stuff by working with coaches. Um, a lot of there's so much free information out there, right? That for everything, that you can do it all on your own and not pay somebody. But sometimes when you pay someone to work with them that like really has sort of a blueprint for you to follow, whether it be for business, whether it be for mindset, whatever it is, fitness, whatever it is that you want to do, right? It helps you get there faster, right? It's more efficient. They've sort of made some of the mistakes for you and that you can learn from. So, don't be afraid to work with a coach. That was another scarcity thing for me in the beginning when I was leaving academia. I was like, I don't want to pay somebody. Like I'm a researcher, like I can figure this out for myself, right? And that's true. I did, but it would have been a lot quicker had I just gotten the shortcut, right? So like Matt's class, the Matt and Laura's class that they talk about, like paying for that class was amazing because it really helped me. It was very clear. It was like, do this, do this, do this. Here's some tools, here's some worksheets, here's some Excel files. And yes, I could have figured that all on my own, but it was much faster to have them streamline it for me, right? So don't be afraid of that. And spending money on yourself is worth it, right? Who better to invest in than yourself, right? And you've invested all those years in your formal education. You've invested all those years, in how many student loans did you take and all that, right? Paying a coach or paying for a class or a workshop or whatever it is, can really be beneficial. So know your worth and charge appropriately. Okay. So again, we talk a lot in this group about, setting fees and things like that. And you have to understand your worth. What are you, what skills do you have that others don't? And the biggest thing here that kind of I think gets in the way is that we're all surrounded by other people who have the same skills, so they don't seem very special, right? And in academia, everyone has a PhD, right? So why is that valuable? But we have to remember that not everybody has the skills that we have. Not everybody has a PhD or a master's degree or has the experience that we have, right? I can, draw up a survey in 10 minutes of my sleep, right? But for someone else, that would take days to do, and it probably still wouldn't be very good, right? So there's skills that we have that are valuable. We need to remember that, and we need to charge appropriately. You also need to heal money wounds, right? Like I said, I'm still working on my hard money wound. I think I've healed a few of them, but I still got one or two more. This book is really great. Wounds to Wealth by Emily June Wilcox. She was one of the judges, mentor people on the reality TV show for entrepreneurs I was on, The Blocks. She has a podcast that's called. Did I put the podcast on there? No, I didn't. She also has a podcast called The Joyous Path to Millions. I highly recommend it. Um, that book I think is really fantastic because it helps you see what money wounds you have. She names them, she talks about how they kind of manifest in your life, and then she also gives you strategies to overcome them. And so I really, really like that book if you want to work on some of your money wounds. And then her podcast is also really great because I think, people often ask me about the show that I was on that, what's the biggest thing I took from it? The biggest thing I took from it is that my money goals are not unreasonable. That there are people out there that are making all the money that I want to make and more. And they're just like me. And so when you put yourself around people that kind of have what you want, um, it makes it so that it's not so crazy, right? Like I want to be a millionaire. I know one legit millionaire in my life, right? And and we don't do anything similar. So to me, the idea of saying I want to make $1 million seems crazy, right? Because I don't know anybody who does. But now, because I went on that show and I kind of made some connections, I know a lot of people who are millionaires. And it doesn't seem that crazy to me to think about that anymore, right? And so working on that and that brings me back to the point about the podcast. The podcast is great because it also it just exposes you to other people. She brings a lot of people on that are doing really well, and I just think that exposure is really helpful. And then just learn more about law of attraction and money mindset. So the top book, Riches, I won't say it because we're on recording, but is by far the best book I've ever read on money mindset. She really explains all of these things about law of attraction and some quantum physics stuff and just different things about money mindset that really to me made me be like, I need to change the way I think about money. And so that I highly recommend that book. The Psychology of Money is also really great about how we think about money, why we think about money, and then what things are helpful and what things are not. Think and Grow Rich is another one. That's Napoleon Hill. That is about all the wealthiest people in like the early 20th century. The one thing that I'm going to give away the results. The one thing they all had in common was they just decided and knew that they were going to be wealthy. That's it. They just made the decision. It was inevitable. And that led to their wealth creation. And then I'm going to put a little plug for ourselves. So my business partner, Angelica, and I, we have done a lot of work in this area. We have done a lot of work to build our business. I'm incredibly proud of where our business is. In just a very short period of time. And so we launched our second business. It's called Coachably. Grantably, Coachably. And so Coachably is to help academics who want to become consultants. And we have a lot of mindset tools and things like that in our program. So we do have some paid programs. One is available now, and then we're working on a couple other ones, but we also have some free resources. So at coachably.com, if you are new, especially, or even if you're not new and you still just have some of these things that you might need to overcome in your mindset, some of the free resources that we have helps with those as well. So, the feedback I've heard is that people really like them and they're really valuable. So at least check those out. And again, just keep working, right? Just keep working on this. Again, it's not something that happens overnight. Like I said, I lived 40 years in a scarcity mindset. That is not easy to turn off. But with some practice, It's just like yoga or meditation or anything like that. It takes practice, right? But with practice, you get better. And I have really seen the benefits of this in my own life, in my own business. Um, and I just want that for all of you too. I want us all to make all the money that you want and do all the good things with it because I know everyone in this room would do amazing things with all the money that they make. So go out and make money. So with
Question
that,
for you before we
yes.
break, Lauren. Um, you just gave kind of a more thorough version of the session that you gave last December. Now, a lot of things have happened that are different from last December, most
Hmm.
notably a new president with a new administration and a lot of changes.
Hmm.
And we talked about that. How has that
Hmm.
changed your perspective on everything that you just presented? Because in
It
many
hasn't.
ways, you said the same things, but you have to have
Hmm.
a different perspective, or maybe you reinforced your beliefs. What are your thoughts?
It, I think it really, really reinforced my beliefs. It really did because don't get me wrong. I mean, I cried myself to sleep that night, and like with that election, and we've seen all these things that are going on, but I feel like you've got to make um the reality is going to be the reality, and like you create your own reality, right? And joy is a source of resistance, and there's a lot of things that are going on that are not great, right? But I think my mindset about it has been like the client that we lost, right? A year ago, I think I would have cried in the corner over losing a client. But this time I was just like, well, that really is unfortunate for the client and it is really, sad that we're not going to continue to work together. But maybe that's opening up an opportunity that have yet to see, right? And then I think that attitude was just helpful for me to get through it. And that was a client that also came back, right? And so I think that's really good. I think so. Here's one thing that Angelica always says, and she's here, but I'm gonna speak for her for a
Yeah,
second.
she's right there. She
Um,
just turned on her screen. Hi,
yeah,
Angelica.
Angelica always says that like the outcome is going to be the outcome, but the reality you live in until you get to that outcome is your choice, right? And so like you can live in fear about all the terrible things that may or may not happen. Or you can live with a more hopeful, positive mindset that will maybe help contribute to those terrible things not happening in the first place, but also help you be a little bit more equipped to deal with them when they do. Right. And so I think because we're always thinking like, well, how can we pivot? Becky's here too, right? Becky has made a great pivot. So Becky also does her bike tours. So when she lost some evaluation clients, she picked up on the bike tours. Well, maybe that's what she needed right now. It's spring. Maybe it's good for her to get outside. Maybe it's, a way for her to just kind of take a break from some of the mental work that she does to do more physical work, right? So I think that there's definitely some shifts in that in thinking about what's the lesson here. So like when things are hard, it's like, what is the lesson? And I let that man take all my mental health the last time he was in office, and I just simply refused to do it this time. I have done way too much work on myself over the last few years to let him take that from me. And so I think that that just reinforces, these mindset shifts that I have made over the last few years. So, and I don't say any of this to minimize pain that anyone is going through, right? I'm just suggesting that you reframe it in a way about how can you learn from what's going on, right? What pivots can you make to hopefully make it better for you? Or you can just sit in pain. But personally, I don't want to do that. I want to look for the bright side. I've always been an optimistic person, but I feel like, and you do what you can do, right? Like I make my calls to my senators and Congress people in the morning, and then I put it away and I go about my day, right? So it's like you can still be active and engaged and do things, right? It doesn't mean you're like oblivious. It just means you're not letting it rule your life and your happiness and your take your joy.
All right, I'm going to wrap up our recorded portion. And so let's say goodbye to all the people out in the YouTube land, but everybody else stick around.